Welcome to the Redline Podcast, featuring co-presenters Bo, the Banksy of LinkedIn and founder at Javelin Content Management, Shane, CEO at Sales Driven, and Antoine, co-founder at Sales Driven, master of storytelling. Each week we will bring you advice, tips, and thoughts about sales, leadership, and share our experience on growing an effective business. Meet guests, enjoy the stories, and most importantly, have fun. This is Redline.
All right, welcome to this week's episode of Redline Podcast. We decided to take a break from having a guest this week. We've had some fantastic guests over the last 3-4 episodes. I've really been stoked about some of the stuff that's come out of it. We can kind of chat about some of the feedback that we've had about certain guests, and we've got some exciting guests coming up as well that we haven't released yet, which will be out by the time this comes out. So I'm excited about some of the stuff that we've talked about. Todd Caponi on transparent selling. We've had Amir Rita on the path to success and success being failure, which was interesting. We've had Andrew Booz from Portion talking about his bumpy path to the current state of where he is now and semi-success, I guess, kind of building on things. So Antoine, I wanted to get into something on this one because it gets raised, and I'm sure you guys get this the same on your calls as well. I get this time and time again around, I lecture people extensively on build it before you need it. And I generally talk about social media when I'm saying that, because obviously my focus is marketing side of things. Yeah. I've got a foot in both camps. I like to bring things inbound for people because I think that your side of stuff on sales is incredibly complex and technical, and it's not for me. I enjoy it, but I enjoy it once you've opened the door, not the door opening bit. I lecture people all the time, and I'm like, you need to build before you can ask, and that's relationships. And that's so my side of how I bring stuff inbound is based on the strength of that relationships. And you guys go out there and you've got your relationships with your clients, and I know you'll feel the same pain is like, Paul, what results are we going to get in the next 30 days? And what can you commit to in terms of how many leads we can get in the next 30 days? I'm like, well, for a start, I don't, for Javelin, I don't really measure on number of leads that we get through the door. I measure on how I transform your pipeline. So real metrics that affect your revenue in terms of how do we better educate your ideal clients before they hit your funnel? How quickly can we get them through your funnel? And how can we make sure that they convert at the end through content? And that's my side of things. Obviously from your side of things, it isn't more about bringing those prospects in. And I always say that's a bonus for me, because by being more consistent on social and wherever you're at, and being more consistent in terms of the themes and topics that you talk about, you'll naturally generate leads as you go down that process. So is that something you guys are seeing as well? Is that it's the age-old problem, I guess, right?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, it works in tandem, I think, right? You're doing it from the content side. You're telling people, build it first, and then, the good stuff is going to come later. But you have to get that content out. You have to build it. You have to create it. You have to send it out there, and people have to see it, and they have to consume it, and they have to understand it, and they have to have questions around it, which brings them into you, right? And it's no different from an outbound perspective, in my opinion. Having run an outbound agency for the last 3 years, coming up to 4 years now, having performed outbound throughout my career, the biggest thing is that people always miss out on when they come to me and say, well, look, I need to see something in the next 4 weeks. Otherwise, I'm going to have to ship off and do something else. Or, look, if I don't get any meetings in the next 6 to 8 weeks, then, it's a wrap. Or if I don't get a deal done in this amount of time, then it's obviously not been worth it. And I always scratch my head at that. And I often, to be honest with you, send people on their way to go and work with another agency that will promise them what they want to hear. Because the truth of the matter is, just like in content where you kind of got to give before you get anything, it's exactly the same with outbound, right? You've got to give before you get. You have to go out there and you have to understand what those people that you're targeting are actually doing for the problem that you're trying to solve for them. And that isn't something that you're going to get straight away, just like that off the bat, because there's only 3% of your market at any one time that's actually looking to spend money on your solution right now. And if you think that you're in the market and all of your competitors are in the market, bigger and smaller, going after that same 3%, than really what's happening with the other 97%, right? So that giving of going out into that market, of sharing value, of giving people an understanding of how to do what they can't do better or how to do what they are doing better. Just because you're giving out away that information doesn't mean that they're going to be able to do it as well as you're going to be able to do it. But what it does mean is that it's going to give them context into how you can help them to perform better if they need to then work with you. So that whole concept of, look, we just need to kind of get some stuff in the door, I think it's a fallacy, personally. You are going to find people out there when you make an initial call that will say, oh, do you know what? We need something like this right now, actually. We've been talking about this internally. This makes sense for us to have a conversation. But for the most part, you're going to be, especially if you're a brand that doesn't have marketing behind you. You're not a big brand. You don't have, commercials. You don't have those LinkedIn ads. You don't have these things that are popping up in front of people on a daily basis. Then you're just in a sea of everybody else, right? It's a sea of sameness. So you might think that your product is special. You might think that what you're doing has a significant USP and you need to share those features and benefits to your audience. But in fact, when you're catching somebody from outbound, it might be a call, it might be an email, whatever, it might be a video that you send out on LinkedIn. You need to have something that captures their imagination and piques their interest. And typically that doesn't come from saying what you're all about. It comes from being able to get them to think about the problem that they're experiencing that you help to solve in a different way. That doesn't mean that that person is automatically going to come back at that point and say, yes, sign me up. I'm ready to give you my money and let's go and do this. It just means that you've now brought them more into your world, and you can start to develop more touch points with them in order to get them to, to a point where you've got them at the right time, right? So I often say this, Paul. I don't know if you kind of come across this or if you've heard it before, but I've had a dent in my car. Somebody smashed into my car last year, I think it was, right? And it's left it's not a massive dent, but it's an unsightly dent. I don't like to look at it, right? If somebody was to call me today and tell me that they've got all the bells and whistles for being able to make, take dents out of cars and make them look much better and make sure that, they can provide a warranty against it and all that kind of good stuff, I'd listen to the call. Yeah. I'm already there. I listen to the call, but I'm not ready to buy. Why? Because I don't really care enough about it right now. My car doesn't need to go back to the manufacturer for another 12 months. So I'm not compelled to do something about that problem now. And it's exactly the same for when people go out to market. They're trying to find a problem. Not everybody's uncomfortable with the problems that they have, right? Some people are happy to live with it. So my point is this, is that sometimes people are throwing away the build or the creation or the kind of, I guess, the motion that they're trying to create because they don't see results instantly. But in actual fact, those people that say not right now, no, specifically, I don't have this challenge, but I might do in the future. Those are the ones that will likely come back and actually be better customers for you than the ones that off the bat say, yes, I'm ready to have a meeting today.
Do you think, though, that a lot of, so I've worked in tech, right? I've worked in sales, in tech, in-house, in AI, complex technology. And one of the things that I saw a lot of other businesses that were similar to us doing the same thing as well was that, to start with, our pipeline wasn't particularly clear. It was a bit startup. It was a bit all over the place. Nobody really had a lot of control over it. I want to get control of it, but didn't have seniority to do it. The people who did have seniority didn't have time to manage it, etc. And so for the sorts of things that we're talking about, I don't think a lot of the businesses actually have a clear vision of how potentially bad things can get really quickly. And they're also suffering from probably a bit of overconfidence at the beginning, right? Like, you've built your business, you're really good at this. I'm confident this is a really good. I've spoken to a few people who think this is a really great idea, and of course these leads are going to convert. So I don't need to worry about anything just now. I'm just going to carry on doing what we're doing. Founder sales, CEO sales, leadership team, open the black book, getting loads of things through the door. I've got more conversations I've got time to deal with. And then all of a sudden, all that dries up and reality hits and conversations don't go the way you want them to, because often the best conversations, it's just that last little screw right at the last minute that just goes, oh, actually, this isn't going to happen. And you're left at a point where you're desperate. And that's where I think a lot of these, I call it preying, right? Like a lot of these lead gen companies prey on companies that have left themselves to get into that situation. And I've tried to leverage that to kind of get out and involve a business that knew what they were doing. And to your point, the good ones I could tell because they just weren't interested, or they were charging costs that we couldn't afford as a small business because they were good at what they were doing and they knew they needed to make people sticky beyond the first 3 months. So let's put a 50 grand package down that weeds out anybody who's just a tire kicker who's going to come along and test us for a month or two. Because let's be honest, like in our sort of game, there's no real profit to us in the first 2-3 months anyway. It's all set up, it's learning, it's building templates, workflows, processes, understanding the clients, getting to know their products and services, getting to know their clients or their ideal clients and their challenges and how to articulate them best on behalf of your clients. So I do think that, you know, that's something that I see a lot of. And that's why I talk to build it before you need it, because I think there's a lot of short-sightedness and a lot of through not maliciously, right? Like it's just confidence. Like people are confident. You need to be confident to start business, but they just don't see the problem until 100%. It becomes a huge problem. And that's where guys like you can really kind of come into their own in terms of making them see that challenge before it becomes painful in real terms. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that absolutely makes sense. And I think, you know, I've been there, right? I've had businesses. I've made those mistakes. I've seen it for myself. When you're working inside of a company as an employee, you can criticize strategy and that kind of stuff all day long, but they've got product market fit, they've got customer base, they've got marketing, they've got all of these things that enable you, when you reach out, to be able to be in a much better position, a stronger position, right? When, like a lot of the people that will listen to this podcast, the types of people that, you know, I will work with who are, you know, they've got a business and they've built it well and they've won customers and they're trying to win more. There's always those steps, right? So 0 to 500, 500 to 1 million, 1 million to 2 million. What got you there won't necessarily get you to that next point, right? And you can definitely get £500,000 on luck and on referrals, right? You can absolutely do that. You can, if you're in a good market, in a strong market, where money's flying around and it's not costing anybody anything, like there's no problem for you to be able to, you know, kind of luck out on a number of deals. But when it gets tough, and then you've really got to provide value and you've got to form, you know, strong relationships, and you've got to do that on the basis of how you sell, then that becomes a lot more difficult, because building that pipeline, maintaining people's interest, giving them a reason to part with their cash where it is difficult and it is challenging to get them to part with that cash is another matter. And I think that creating momentum in business is pretty tough, right? But what people kind of get sucked into is that trap of, well, you know, it's pretty easy. We just need to speak to a load of people and then we're going to get a load of business back. Whereas actually it's like, okay, are you pointing your, you know, kind of your cannons in the right direction? Okay. Are you aiming at the right place? You think, you believe that these people are your ICP. Have you done enough work to actually understand that 100% they are your ICP? Because if they're not, then you're going to be wasting a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money and directing your kind of information and your education and all of those systems that you're using at precisely the wrong people, which then makes you lose ground. So it's a case of, you know, that work of really understanding your market, when push comes to shove. How important is your technology or your software for them to be able to see efficiency, effectiveness, right? Cost savings, reduce their time on effort within their organization. How much is that going to come into play? Because if it does, then it means that it's setting you up for really massive opportunities, irrespective of what the market is. But if you're finding it difficult, then maybe there's something in the messaging, maybe there's something in the product, maybe there's something in the ICP that isn't quite right. And sometimes people spend a long time on the wrong track and refusing to look over the other side because they're so kind of bullish on what they do and how strong their product is, rather than kind of take a step back, have a wider scope and say, what are we missing here? If we go back and we listen to those calls that we're having, or if we have a look at the responses that we're getting, what is that actually telling us in terms of where we need to be focused? And so I think that, especially with the work that I do with companies, it's really on understanding those elements, right? Are you looking at this specifically in the right way? You've told us that this is a white hot market, but the data behind it from the calls that you've been doing would suggest that you're not in the right part of that market. You're looking at enterprise, you should be looking at small to medium businesses, for example, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at one-man bands or whatever, you should be looking at 5 to 10 person companies. It's all about the fit, and that doesn't necessarily come just within the first 3-6 months of your business. It sometimes takes 2 to 3 years to get that focus and hone in on it. It's not that the channels that you use don't necessarily work. It's not that you haven't got a product that's going to work for somebody, but it's about finding the right way, the right pathway for that to be accepted in the kind of demographic group that you need to target. Did you see where I'm coming from? Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And I think the thing that kind of rings clear from what you're saying is the other side of things, that people, businesses and companies need to be adaptable whilst they're in this growth stage as well, because quite often what I see is where you think you're going to land isn't always where you actually land. And you've got to then consider, do you put your beachhead there and say, no, I need to adjust who I'm aiming things at because it's not landing where we want it to land? Or do we move the beachhead entirely and go, right, well, actually, we've hit on a rich vein here. This seems to be working. It's not quite what I intended to do. Let's put my ego down and our confidence down and go, actually, is this something we could pursue and make a success of? And I've seen this with even just like in 2-3 months with my business. I set out and I'm adamant that the content side of things, video-based content interviews are crucial to a lot of tech businesses in order to associate that brand personality with a business and an organization, rather than just a cold hard organization that nobody really cares about. But yet already I've seen quite a lot of interest in somebody who understands that, being able to then offer marketing advice and support to businesses. And so we're now doing quite a lot of work around how do we help support our future clients on more general marketing stuff, like getting rebrands done and websites and things like that, based on the trust that we've built through talking to them only about that one thing. And already part of me is thinking, is this a spin-off business? Is this another business that I run? Is it part of the same thing? Do I stick to my guns? Do I go to them? And it's like there's that constant dilemma, but you've got to be aware of it to have the conversations in the first place. Too many businesses out there that are just blinkered and they're just looking at what they think they need to look at, and not really seeing what's happening around the edges. If your CRM, for example, isn't optimized and it's not optimized, how can you be sure that you're making the right decisions? Because I can guarantee, most businesses need that external support. Like they need a fresh set of eyes. They're too frightened of giving away their trade secrets by opening up their doors to the CRM to get somebody to come and have a look at it and go, does this look right to you? But I guarantee 9 times out of 10, I'll look at a report. Shane sent me one the other day of something he was looking at, and he was like, does this look right to you? And I was like, no, well, they haven't done this, they haven't done that. And it's clear that these two things aren't tracking together where they should be. They need to change how they're doing this end of things to make that match up. Obviously, their assumptions are wrong. And he was like, yeah, that's what I was thinking, but I just wanted somebody else's set of eyes on that. And I think that's something I've learned a lot as I've gone through the last 3-4 years, is just don't be afraid to take that little bit of outside help, whether that comes through a partner, whether it's a consultant, or whether it's somebody that you just know who's experiencing those sorts of things. Just get a fresh opinion on, so you can make sure you're making the right decisions and you're not going to end up in that desperate situation where you need to land clients tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's massive. It's a massive point. And I think there's a general, I think from my side, what I see on LinkedIn and in other places, you see it on Insta, see it on YouTube, there's people that are building these seemingly very successful businesses overnight, right? 4 weeks after launching, they're doing 20 grand a month, right? Or they're they've built this product, and now all of a sudden they've got everybody that is flocking to them, and they're seeing significant wins. And the truth is, it's really hard to do that. It's really, really hard to do that, even with what might seem like really kind of innovative technology. Technology now, especially if you look in the SaaS space, for example, a lot of companies are looking at consolidating everything into one platform. So last year it was, who's got the best tech stack? All right. So all of these different companies that are selling different components and stuff that kind of add into a tech stack that then performs at, an efficient and effective speed. When you piece it all together, it's not efficient at all. All of those different pieces of technology take time to onboard. They take time to adopt. You need everybody in the organization to want to be able to use it. If they don't use it, they go back to their old way. Then that's sitting there and it's losing them money, right? So it's like when you're looking at this and you're thinking, yeah, there's this guy that's gone and built this, or this company that's gone and built this, and they're making kind of a great success of it all. It doesn't necessarily apply to you on your journey by seeing what somebody else is doing or by seeing what other companies are doing. I think that it really makes sense that fine-tuning what you have, understanding your market, being able to ask, like you've said, for outside help on, are we looking to, inward on this? Or do you see that we're potentially at the risk of implosion because we haven't taken in these factors or had a look at these other perspectives that can open up another pathway for us to be able to do something where it may not be the initial route that we thought that we were going to take, but it's a more sustainable route for us to be able to make money and grow as a business. You can always, agility is the key, right? I think that's what you're getting to. Being agile at that time enables you to be able to switch and flip and flop as you need until you do find the right swim lane. So up until that point, I think it's just about the testing and iteration, and it's a constant feedback loop as to who you are speaking to, what they are saying to you. A lot of people, they onboard a customer and they leave it there. Onboard your customer, have that ongoing dialogue, and ask them 6 months down the line, if they're still with you then, what is it that, you're still, why is it that you're still using us? What are you seeing from the work that we're doing together? From where you were when we initially started working with you, when you had this specific pain point, where are you now today, and what has it done for you? So what's the narrative that you can build around that? Have those customer case studies, have those success stories, but ultimately use that messaging, because ultimately you want to model your future customers on your best customers today, or the best prospects that you've had a conversation with that have said, you know what, I'm not right there right now, but this is a technology or this is a service that I would absolutely buy because the positioning of this is correct. The problems that you've said, anybody in my position in this type of company or in this industry, they will have it, right? So I think it's important for people to embrace that and not just always be so bullish on, well, I've got this. I think it's gonna work great. I'm so passionate and so kind of headstrong about it that I've got the blinkers on and I'm just going in this direction. You have to be able to kind of take a step back, zoom out, and say, all right, we wanted to go here, but we're seeing a lot of hurdles and a lot of blockages. But we had a few conversations that have said if we go down here, it's going to be a much smoother pathway for us. And so I just think it makes a lot of sense to onboard those ideas from outside sources, be open, not just with your kind of eyes, but with your ears as well. And really kind of, have a focus on, we can grow outside of where we thought was going to be the right swim lane for us.
Perfect. I think there's some really good takeaways for businesses and leaders from that. And I think that's both sides of the fence, both sales market and businesses that are maybe looking at sales and marketing services right now. And that's kind of what we're going for with the whole show, right? Is we're not here to kind of represent the sales market particularly. We're not here to represent the marketing teams. We're here to give some balanced views as to challenges that people are facing right now, and give some real world advice, not some generic, just kind of sort of philosophical bullshit that I hear a lot of podcasts spouting out. Like, it's got to be real and delivering real results. And look, so far, thanks very much to everybody who's subscribed to the show and who's had some feedback for us. We're over 30,000 views on YouTube now. We've not paid a penny for any advertising. We've not really done a great deal of promotion. The newsletter is now firing, so if you're listening to this and you want to subscribe to the newsletter, you'll get one every week, at least one every week, telling you who's coming up on the next show, reminding you that the new episode's dropped. But we're also going to start to do some nice little blog newsletters where we offer out some advice, no matter which side of the fence you're on, different topics each week. I'm confident that that'll offer some real value based on some of the things that we've talked to our guests about. And like I said at the beginning of the show, we've got guys like Chris Walker lined up to come on the show. Huge celebrity in the marketing space. There's a couple of others that I can't confirm yet because I'm still waiting on them saying the final yes. But some huge enterprise marketing and sales leaders who've got some really interesting views on things. Antoine, thanks very much for being co-host on the show, because it's been a real blast kicking this off. We're almost at 10 episodes, so we're almost in the 750,000 episodes that make it past 10. It's been a bit of a roller coaster getting everything set up and running. Guys and girls, if you're listening to this and you fancy launching your own podcast, I can tell you it's a lot more hard work than you expect it to be. But it is possible. It is possible.
That's why it took us so long to do it.
Yeah.
I've had the idea for
just
a year, months ago.
Sometimes you just got to like press the button and just roll with it, and then the kind of the pressure of having it live makes it happen. And it's kind of but it helps having somebody with ADHD on board, right? Just do those 8-9 hour nights where I'm just sat staring at podcast screens and websites and programming things. It's all good fun.
One thing I would say, Paul, is anybody who's listened to the episode so far, and whether they've been with guests or just an episode like this today with me and Paul, and some of the challenges that you've heard of resonate with you, let us know what it is that you're experiencing, because we can bring that up as discussions on the podcast, and we can either give some context as to what we're hearing. I'm on prospecting calls every day, so is Paul. I work with customers and clients, and some of these challenges definitely we will have heard of, and we'll be able to explore some of those on further podcasts, which will help you to gain a little bit more value out of that. And we can bring on guests, and we can pose those questions to guests with successful businesses that have encountered those challenges as well. So anything that you've heard where you thought, oh, you know what, that actually makes sense. I feel that pain, or, I've experienced this and I'm still experiencing it right now. Just kind of drop a note into the show and let us know, and we'll definitely, explore that in further detail.
Or if you think we're wrong, we'd love to hear from people who think we're wrong and why, as long as there's a constructive argument there, not just being horrible like a lot of people have been. We've had some built-in trolls on YouTube. Love it. But yeah, contact details are in the description of the episode. Whether you're listening on podcast, whether you're watching us on YouTube, the contact details are all there. Feel free to drop us a line. Would love to hear from you. And that's it from me from this week. Thanks very much for joining us, Antoine, and I will see you in a week or two.